Hi, Kyle. My name is Korie Bouse. I'm currently an RA in East LaVille Hall. Thank you so much for joining this meeting. I'm super excited to get to know you a little bit more during our time. I'm going to take about 20 to 25 minutes and just discuss your skills in leadership, time management, and crisis response. Um, but I definitely don't want you to worry about this interview because it's going to be super chill, super laid back, so just answer as best you can. So first we have what is an example of a time where you resolved a conflict between yourself and a friend?
So, an example of a time that I resolved a conflict is back in high school. I did a lot of film, and there was usually a lot of clashing between like the creative like the creative side of a project and the actual like application of like filming it, and like how that went, like the director and then who was actually filming, like behind the camera.
Mm.
Um, and a lot of times I ended up taking on the leadership roles for that as the director and also like producer and stuff like that. So a lot of times how I would manage kind of conflict of ideas and just between crew members in general was I would stop what we're doing and I would just say, okay, everyone, get all of it out, get all of your ideas out. We'll voice both sides. And the whole thing about film is doing what's most practical and doing what is most efficient with the resources you have and the locations and the sets and all of that. So we'd list them all out on both sides, and I'd basically say, okay, I'm going to go with this idea as the director. I'm going to make the call, but make sure that people feel acknowledged that we heard out both sides of the conflict. And I've been the one sometimes that has been in conflict with other people. I've been stopping in between two other people. I just like to list out both sides, hear out both sides completely, and then we usually a third party talks about what's sort of the best direction to go.
Awesome. Okay, so how do you choose to prioritize your time between school, work, and like your personal life on a daily basis?
So I'm not the best example of this. I am not great at balancing like the prioritization of like free time and personal enjoyment and schoolwork. But if there's something like dire and important that needs to be done for school, I typically try and I get that done at least before the end of the day. Usually whenever that anxiety hits in. But for the most part, it's just kind of making sure you understand like what's coming up with your assignments and like knowing when you're kind of allowed to have some of that free time and get away with, not focusing all the time on your schoolwork.
Yeah. Okay, so what is an example of a time when you responded to a stressful situation?
Okay. So I don't know if this is a great example to use because this is like a I'm gonna go with a different example. So back in high school when I was writing my essays to apply for colleges, there was a big timeline ahead of me that I had to finish this certain essay, the biggest one, by a certain date so I could hit early admissions for college. And I just couldn't get it. I just couldn't get the essay in the form that I wanted, and it was like one of the most stressful periods of time of my life because it was deciding like my future pretty much. So it had to be perfect, and that drove a lot of conflict between me and like my dad who was helping me apply and stuff like that. And it was just he kept wanting it to be redone and drawn out, and I just wanted to get it out there. And I was so stressed by the end. I just wanted to get it done with. And I realized from that situation that sometimes in stressful situations, I can tend to prioritize just getting it out there, getting the framework done, getting it out there in some sort of finished form. Um, so usually my end goal, like when I'm stressed, is like at least complete the bare minimum and at least like finish what I need to do.
Mhm.
Like absolutely. And if more time is allowed, then I would probably have been less stressed or something like that. I
Yeah.
don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, I think it's good to be aware of that. Like your own, the way this that you handle stress specifically and what you prioritize. Um,
Mhm.
okay, so the next one is what's your biggest strength?
I'd say my biggest strength is I know what needs to be done to sort of like secure do a project well, or like secure
Mm,
my future, or how to prep for a job, or an assignment, or a group thing, whatever. Is I'm very good about, I know the responsibilities of, and like the tasks that, and the skills that you need to have a handle on, like what you need to know. Um, there was a lot of times in high school where it's like I'd be frustrated with friends because it just felt like they didn't have a goal in
mm,
mind, and like they didn't have like a plan. They didn't have like their steps of how they were going to succeed and like what they were going to do. And it's, I'm not saying I'm necessarily the best at following and implementing those, but I've always genuinely been good about knowing what needs to be done of me.
nice. Okay, on the flip side of that one, what's your biggest weakness and how are you planning to improve upon that weakness or like that area?
So I'd say my biggest weakness is kind of the other side of the coin with that. It's the follow through.
Mm,
I struggle a lot with work motivation, and I get really into and excited about a new prospect or idea or project or whatever I need to do. And then I get burned out really quickly, or my brain just doesn't, it loses all that steam. And so I've always struggled a lot with like the follow through and
mhm.
finishing stuff like that. So I'd say, yeah, that's probably my biggest weakness.
Yeah. Do you have like any plans on how you're gonna like combat that? Like how you might improve upon like
Yeah.
work ethic?
Yeah, so I mean, part of that is building it into your schedule, and it's the repetition on that. And I think repetition's really the only answer. I mean, it's, you just got to go bit by bit.
Mm,
Not all of it at once, you can't put that on you, but you have to really commit to yourself to even do a little bit each day. And if you keep doing that, then it's going to be less and less hard. And you're going to, once you start something, it's usually less hard than you thought it was. But usually like starting that and the follow through on that is the hardest part for me.
yeah. Okay. So what is your motivation for applying to the RA role?
My motivation for applying to the RA role, well, I would say that one, it looks good on a resume, but
Yeah.
two is that I see it as a leadership and like a managing opportunity to get to provide others with an experience that I didn't particularly get. My freshman year RA didn't do anything. We barely knew the guy. I think I saw him, talk to him maybe 4 times my entire freshman year. It's just kind of like getting to provide other people with that sort of opportunity and that freshman experience. But yeah, it's also just like a leadership opportunity, and like knowing what it's like to manage adults and, well, hopefully adults. But
Mhm.
yeah.
Um, so also like going along kind of with that question, but
Mhm.
why do you think that you would be a good fit for the role?
I'd say that I'm a good fit for the role because I have a lot of experience working in groups and like managing teams and doing stuff like that. So I've always, for the last few years of my life, I've had a lot of chances to sort of take command and um, provide a fun experience for people, but also know when to kind of like get people together and you know do my job and keeps people organized and sort of make sure that they're doing what needs to be doing and they're not harming sort of the project, or in this situation, they're not breaking the rules of the dorm, and they're not being unsafe.
Yeah. Um, so I know you mentioned a little bit about like, being in a leadership position for like your film stuff, and you've led groups and been working with groups. So, have you ever held like a leadership position where you were tasked with looking after like students or like campers, and how did that like impact your development as a leader?
I would say personally, no, I have not been in a position where I'm necessarily in charge of like younger people.
Mm,
Um, I've I've handled like it's hard to explain. So like back in high school, like I was my senior year, I was like president of the whole film organization and all that community that did all those and went to competitions. So in a way, I had experience like mentoring and guiding like the newcomers, which were typically like freshmen or sophomores.
mhm,
Um, so but no, besides that, I do not have experience.
mhm. How long were you part of the film like organization?
For 3 years, so my sophomore to senior year. Um, and I still occasionally, not as much anymore, but at least during my college freshman year, I'd go back and during breaks, I'd help them out a little bit here and there.
Mm. That wasn't one of the official questions. I was just curious. Um, so next one is how would you ensure that your dorm or hall has a reputation for like inclusivity and community closeness?
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think that comes from community events and,
Hmm.
making sure your residents talk to each other outside of their roommates and even talking to their roommates. Me and my freshman year roommate didn't, we probably had 20 conversations in our entire year that we lived together. It's just about, I think the roommate matching process sometimes has some flaws in it,
Hmm.
and you don't get matched with, that right sort of person for you to like make those friends. So I think it's really important as an RA to foster an environment where your residents want to come out and hang out in the halls and talk to people and like you recognize the people in your building. You can strike up a conversation and hopefully see them together in groups at like community events and stuff like
Yeah. Um, so my final question is, what's an example of a time when you were required to respond to customer like complaints or requests?
that.
And it doesn't have to be like customers. Like if you haven't ever
Just
really worked.
respond to complaints or requests about something.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't worked in like a
Something I've
customer
worked on.
service setting, then
Yeah, I don't
that
particularly
works.
have I don't particularly have customer service um experience, but I do understand how to handle feedback and how to work and change
Yeah.
things based off of that. I know I keep referencing high school things a lot with film, but that's the closest thing I can think of when it comes to feedback and work experience. Where like after districts, like competitions for film and stuff like that, like districts, the first level of competing, we
Yeah.
go on to the next round, but being able to take feedback from the judges and from our teacher and other competitors and being able to sort of implement that change and like see how you can make your product better and how you can better serve and present sort of the needs and requirements of what your boss or your judges or the customer is looking for. So yeah, I have a lot of experience, I would say, in shipping out, multiple stages of
Yeah.
a product until you reach the end result.
Yeah, well, so that was my last question, but I mean, I think it's great that you have the desire to be in this role and that you want to give like new residents a better experience than what you had.
Mhm.
Um I think it's really cool that you worked in film for 3 years. I think that's awesome. And while it may not have like, like customer service or specific things that pertain to the RA role, I definitely think that that would have given you a great experience with leadership. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I mean, I appreciate you taking the time to come out today. Again, this was supposed to be like super chill, so please don't stress too
Mhm.
much. We'll get back to you probably by email within the next few weeks. So, yeah, you did great. That's all I have.
Thank you.